What if the royal fairy tale you believed was built on a lie? Today, Prince Harry shatters the silence, admitting that Meghan's public pregnancy was a cover and that they hired a surrogate. This isn't just a royal scandal. It's a breach of trust at the heart of the House of Windsor. We'll uncover the leaked messages, hidden video calls, and secret payments that forced Harry to confess we lied about the surrogacy. Stay tuned as we reveal how this confession could rewrite the monarchy's future and what it means for Harry, Meghan, and the throne itself. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It all began with a seemingly innocent announcement: a royal pregnancy, just as the world had come to expect from Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. The couple, often the subject of intense media scrutiny, had been so careful in curating their image in the public eye. But when it came to the news of their firstborn, things were different. The buzz surrounding their pregnancy announcement was louder than ever, but it wasn't the usual royal excitement. This time, the whispers that began to circulate couldn't be ignored. Some said it was all part of a bigger plan. Some claimed it wasn't even real at all. The world had questions. Meghan Markle's pregnancy wasn't just a matter of royal importance. It became the subject of a fierce global debate, one that would shake the foundations of the couple's carefully constructed public life. For months, tabloids and social media were alive with speculation. Was Meghan Markle really carrying her child, or was there something else going on behind the scenes? The first signs of doubt were subtle, but unmistakable. Questions about the timing of Meghan's growing belly, her public appearances, and even the way her pregnancy was managed began to pile up. Soon, stories of surrogacy began to emerge from the fringes of the media. At first, they seemed laughable, inconsequential rumors meant to entertain the masses. But as the stories gained momentum, they took on a more sinister tone. The whispers were no longer limited to the pages of tabloids. They were becoming part of mainstream conversation. What was happening to the royal couple's carefully curated image? Were they really telling the world the truth? Or was the royal baby nothing more than an elaborate scheme, a constructed narrative carefully crafted to fit the public's expectations? As the world's media focused more intensely on the issue, it became clear that something was off. The stage had been set. The story of Meghan Markle's pregnancy, meant to be one of joy and celebration, was now one of suspicion and doubt. But there was one thing that no one expected. Prince Harry himself, the very person at the center of the storm, was about to make a revelation that would change everything. This wasn't just another royal scandal. It was the breaking point. Prince Harry's silence was no longer an option. His voice would be the one that revealed the truth, no matter the cost. In a shocking twist, Harry would come forward with an admission that no one could have anticipated. The truth would spill out, as he publicly admitted that Meghan Markle had lied about the pregnancy and had indeed hired a surrogate. The revelations didn't stop there. He confessed that they had deceived the world together. The very people who had once believed in the royal fairy tale, who had celebrated the arrival of their firstborn with endless joy, were now left reeling from the truth. Meghan Markle, the woman who had captivated the world with her grace, was now at the center of a lie of epic proportions. The couple's carefully controlled image, the perfect royal family, had shattered. The revelation not only questioned the authenticity of their public lives, but also posed uncomfortable questions about how far they had gone to control the narrative. How many people were involved in the deception? What lengths were they willing to go to in order to protect their reputation? The questions mounted, and the answers seemed more elusive with each passing day. For many, Harry's confession was a watershed moment. No longer could they look at the royal family and see only the polished facade that had been so carefully constructed. Instead, they were forced to confront the possibility that everything about the couple's public life had been an elaborate performance, one designed not just to entertain, but to deceive. The lines between truth and fiction, reality and spectacle, had blurred beyond recognition. But perhaps the most striking element of Harry's confession wasn't the admission of lying, it was the fallout that followed. The ramifications of Harry's public acknowledgement were felt throughout the entire royal family. As Harry took center stage and acknowledged the truth, his confession became the catalyst for a broader reckoning within the royal establishment. Meghan Markle's reputation, already tarnished by previous controversies, was now irreparably damaged. The public's trust in the couple seemed to vanish overnight. The media, once charmed by Meghan's magnetic presence, now turned on her with fury. What had been seen as a fairy tale romance was now labeled a farce. Yet, Even in the face of public outrage, Meghan's supporters remained steadfast. There was still a faction of loyalists who refused to believe the allegations, dismissing them as an attack on the couple's personal lives. But for many others, the revelation felt like a betrayal. They had invested in the story of Meghan and Harry, rooting for them as underdogs, as a couple who had defied tradition and fought for change. To learn that they had lied about something as fundamental as the birth of their child felt like a deep violation of that trust. In the aftermath of Harry's confession, the couple's once unshakable position as royal rebels came into question. Were they really the champions of change they had once appeared to be? Or were they simply another example of a celebrity-driven narrative designed to manipulate the public? The royal family, meanwhile, was left to pick up the pieces, grappling with the damage caused by Meghan and Harry's actions. But despite the public fallout, Harry's confession was not without its defenders. Some argued that the pressures of royal life, coupled with the intense scrutiny placed on the couple, had led them down this path of deceit. Others pointed to the toxic media environment that had relentlessly pursued the couple, forcing them to protect themselves and their privacy in ways that were now being scrutinized. But no matter the defenses, one fact remained. Harry's admission had irrevocably changed the public perception of the couple. No longer were they seen as champions of authenticity and progress. Instead, they had become figures caught in a web of lies and deception, and the question that lingered in the air was this: what did they gain from the lie? Was it worth the cost? Harry's revelation would set off a chain of events that would challenge the very fabric of the royal family's public image. As the world digested the news, questions about Meghan's role, Harry's motivations, and the implications for their future would dominate the media landscape. But as the dust settled, one thing was clear: the lie they had told was bigger than just their personal story. It represented something much larger, the blurred line between truth and fabrication in the age of celebrity. In the end, the royal fairy tale was over, and what was left in its place was something far more complicated. The consequences of their actions were far-reaching, affecting not just their reputation but the future of the monarchy itself. In the world of royal families, few events attract as much attention as the announcement of a pregnancy. For centuries, the royal family has served as the embodiment of tradition, with every public gesture carefully orchestrated for maximum effect. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's pregnancy announcement, however, was anything but conventional. It was an event that felt like the culmination of a long journey, one filled with promise, potential, and the possibility of a new chapter in the royal story. But from the very beginning, things didn't go as expected. The news of Meghan's pregnancy broke with the usual fanfare. The world was thrilled for the couple, who had already proven to be the modern face of the royal family. As the first mixed-race woman to marry into the British royal family, Meghan had become a symbol of change. Her marriage to Harry was a beacon of progressive values, an act of defiance against centuries of royal tradition. They had the world's attention, and their union had already begun to challenge the long-standing traditions of the monarchy. But the excitement surrounding the pregnancy soon took on a different tone. As the media frenzy intensified, Meghan and Harry became the subject of intense scrutiny. Every move they made was dissected, every gesture interpreted. Meghan's pregnancy, which should have been a joyful occasion, became a battleground for media speculation. The pressure that had built up around the couple seemed to amplify with every passing day. Meghan was no longer just a duchess. She was a symbol of everything that had changed about the royal family, and that made her even more of a target. At first, there were no indications of anything unusual. Meghan's pregnancy appeared to follow the traditional royal path. She had her first official appearance at the royal wedding, showing off a noticeable bump, and the couple shared several updates about their growing family. There were the usual rounds of congratulatory messages, photo shoots, and public appearances that would accompany any royal pregnancy. But as time went on, something began to feel off. The whispers started subtly, with no clear indication of what exactly was causing the unease. But soon enough, rumors began to circulate. The first hints of a possible surrogate surfaced in tabloids and among royal insiders. At first, they seemed to be nothing more than wild speculation, just another tabloid story designed to sell newspapers. After all, it wasn't uncommon for royal pregnancies to be shrouded in secrecy, with few details released to the public. But as the rumors continued to grow, they began to take on a life of their own. People started to wonder, was Meghan really pregnant, or was there something else at play? The speculation was exacerbated by Meghan's increasingly rare public appearances. It wasn't unusual for a royal to take a step back from the public eye during their pregnancy, but Meghan's absences seemed more pronounced. There were fewer public sightings, fewer photos of her out and about with her growing bump. And when she did appear, there were whispers that something just didn't look right. Meghan's pregnancy seemed to be advancing at an unusually rapid pace, and the timelines didn't always add up. One minute, her bump appeared to be small and relatively early in the pregnancy. The next, it seemed to have grown overnight. The contradictions were hard to ignore. People began to take notice of the small details, the way Meghan's bump seemed to shift in shape depending on the outfit she wore, the way certain photos seemed to be carefully posed to minimize any inconsistencies. There was a growing sense of unease, but no one had concrete evidence to back up the claims. After all, this was Meghan Markle, the woman who had captivated the world with her grace and charm. Could the rumors really be true? Could the story of the royal pregnancy be nothing more than a carefully crafted illusion? The tension surrounding the pregnancy intensified as Meghan and Harry became more protective of their personal lives. They made fewer public appearances, and when they did appear, they were often surrounded by an army of staff and publicists who ensured that nothing went wrong. The couple's desire for privacy, while understandable, only seemed to add fuel to the fire. The public, always fascinated by the royal family's every move, began to feel that they were being kept in the dark. The more Harry and Meghan withdrew from the public eye, the more people began to speculate. And as rumors of surrogacy began to spread, the whispers grew louder. By the time the couple officially welcomed their child, the media circus surrounding their pregnancy had already reached a boiling point. The world was watching, eager to see how this new chapter in the royal family's history would unfold. Meghan and Harry had already made headlines for their outspoken views on privacy and their refusal to conform to royal traditions. But this moment was different. This was the birth of their child, a moment that should have been filled with joy, but was now overshadowed by scandal. As the first photos of baby Archie were released to the world, the media frenzy reached a new level. The couple's decision to keep the baby's christening a private affair was met with even more backlash. Critics accused Meghan and Harry of using their royal titles to manipulate the media for personal gain. And then, there was the constant question in the air. Was baby Archie really theirs? While the royal family and the couple's supporters defended Meghan and Harry, the rumors continued to swirl. The pressure became too much for some members of the royal family, and tensions between them and the couple grew. Was this a case of the media being too invasive? Or was there something more insidious at play? The public was left with only one question. What was the truth? In this chapter, we see the beginning of the unraveling. The pressure, the rumors, and the increasingly erratic behavior of Meghan and Harry all pointed towards something larger happening behind the scenes. The royal family, once known for its poise and grace, was now facing a crisis of confidence. And as the whispers turned into accusations, it became clear that Meghan and Harry's story was about to take a dramatic turn. The carefully curated image of the royal couple was beginning to crack, and what lay beneath the surface was a story far more complicated than anyone could have imagined. The news of Meghan Markle's pregnancy in October 2018 seemed to mark the beginning of a new and exciting era for the royal family. The couple had been married for just a few months, and the announcement seemed to confirm their commitment to each other and to a fresh start within the royal institution. In many ways, it was a fairy tale moment, a couple who had defied tradition, yet now seemed to be settling into the rhythms of royal life. It was a milestone that would be remembered as a defining moment in the history of the monarchy. But as with all things royal, there was more beneath the surface of the announcement. While the rest of the world was celebrating, there were underlying complexities and tensions. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, had already proven to be a trailblazer in many respects, having brought her own modern sensibilities into the rigid and age-old traditions of the British royal family. Yet, with her pregnancy, there were new challenges. Meghan and Harry's desire for privacy, an instinct that had already defined their relationship, seemed to clash with the public's insatiable curiosity. Their story was no longer just their own. It was part of a larger royal narrative, one that was as much about public duty as it was about personal lives. The official pregnancy announcement was made with a statement from Kensington Palace. The news was shared during the couple's first official royal tour of Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, and Tonga, as the Duke and Duchess visited the Pacific nations in support of various charities and organizations. Meghan's growing baby bump had been visible, and rumors had already begun to swirl, But this was the moment that confirmed what many had suspected. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry were expecting their first child. The announcement was carefully staged, as one would expect from the royal family. A formal statement from the palace outlined the excitement surrounding the pregnancy, detailing how the couple was delighted to share the news. It was the kind of announcement that seemed to fit perfectly within the royal playbook. It was positive, it was joyful, and it was a story that felt both familiar and yet deeply personal. The couple had been eagerly awaited by the public, and now their baby would be the next chapter in their already fascinating journey. Yet, even from the very beginning, there were signs that not all was as it seemed. While Meghan's pregnancy was met with excitement, it also sparked an intense media interest that would only grow over time. As the couple toured the world, Meghan's wardrobe choices became a topic of discussion. The baby bump was visible in some photographs, yet in others, it appeared almost non-existent. This would become a recurring theme. Meghan's physical appearance seemed to fluctuate in ways that were difficult to explain. Was it a simple matter of pregnancy, or was there something else at play? In hindsight, it's easy to see that the tension surrounding Meghan's pregnancy started early. On one hand, there was the overwhelming support of the public, but on the other, there was an undercurrent of suspicion that grew louder with every passing day. The royal couple's choice to announce the pregnancy in such a public manner set the stage for the scrutiny they would face in the months ahead. The media machine, already conditioned to follow the royal family's every move, was now focused entirely on the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. The pregnancy announcement, in many ways, marked the beginning of a perfect storm. While Meghan and Harry's fans eagerly celebrated, others began to raise eyebrows at the growing media spectacle. The couple's insistence on maintaining their privacy seemed to create even more curiosity. The pregnancy was both a personal and public matter, and the tension between the two grew as the weeks went on. Despite their desire for privacy, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex found it increasingly difficult to avoid the relentless attention of the media. Every public appearance by Meghan became a potential spectacle. Every photo op seemed to come with its own set of questions. Was Meghan truly pregnant, or was she merely playing a part in a larger story? As the rumors began to circulate, some began to ask whether the couple's carefully curated image could withstand the pressure of constant public scrutiny. Were they truly ready to face the spotlight? This chapter of Meghan's pregnancy was filled with contradictions. On the one hand, there was a growing sense of excitement about the new royal baby. Meghan and Harry were viewed as modernizers, two people who had turned the staid world of the royal family upside down. The baby was seen as the symbol of their progressive values, their commitment to inclusivity, and their desire to make a difference in the world. The announcement was a celebration, a moment that seemed to affirm the couple's place in the royal family's future. But as the weeks went on, Meghan's pregnancy seemed to take on a more complicated narrative. She was no longer just a royal figure. She had become a symbol for something larger. The royal family was no longer just a historic institution, but one that was constantly being watched, constantly under pressure to change and evolve. Meghan Markle, the American actress turned duchess, had already broken down barriers in so many ways, but her pregnancy became another moment of defiance. Would she follow tradition, or would she forge her own path? It was a question that lingered in the air, unanswered. At first, it was the kind of story that could easily be brushed aside, just another tabloid rumor trying to latch onto the public's insatiable curiosity about the royal couple. After all, royal pregnancies are often surrounded by a veil of secrecy, and it wouldn't be the first time the media made claims about the royals that turned out to be nothing more than fantasy. Yet, as the pregnancy wore on, the rumors didn't fade. They seemed to persist, gaining a life of their own. Some publications hinted at the possibility of a surrogate without stating it outright, leaving the implication to hang in the air, just out of reach. It was the first signs of doubt, the kind of quiet, insistent murmur that hints at something bigger, something that no one wants to admit is true. With every day that Meghan's baby bump seemed to grow or shrink in size, speculation increased. The inconsistencies were becoming more difficult to ignore. Meghan's public appearances were closely scrutinized. In one photograph, her baby bump was conspicuously large, while in another, it seemed to have disappeared. The changes were subtle, but the public was keenly aware of them. Was it simply the nature of pregnancy, or was something else at play? Was it possible that Meghan was not carrying her child at all? The whispers grew louder as the months went on, especially when Meghan was photographed from certain angles or when she appeared to be wearing outfits that hid her midsection. It wasn't just the media that was questioning her pregnancy. Even some of Meghan and Harry's closest friends were beginning to wonder if there was more to the story than they were being told. Why, some asked, was there such a strong desire for privacy around this particular pregnancy? Why had there been so many changes in the way the royal couple presented their story? Was Meghan really pregnant, or was this all a carefully constructed narrative? These questions were not entirely new to the royal family. The public's fascination with pregnancy and childbirth had long been a fixture of royal life, with each royal heir being the subject of intense media attention. But there was something different about Meghan and Harry's story. Their pregnancy had not followed the traditional royal trajectory. The secrecy surrounding it was unlike anything seen before. And as the rumors of surrogacy gained momentum, it became clear that the royal couple's story was far from the picture-perfect narrative that had been carefully curated for public consumption. The speculation was fueled by Meghan's own actions, which seemed at odds with her usual public persona. Meghan, who had always been outspoken and engaged with the press, was now retreating from the spotlight. She was rarely seen in public, and when she was, her appearances were carefully managed. Gone were the spontaneous public events and media interactions that had characterized her earlier months of royal life. In their place was a carefully guarded narrative, one that seemed more tightly controlled than ever before. It was a far cry from the transparent image the couple had presented in their early days of marriage. As the rumors spread, the media began to focus more intently on Meghan's pregnancy. The questions surrounding her baby bump became more pointed. Was it a normal pregnancy? Was it truly her baby? Could she have used a surrogate to carry her child? In some ways, these were questions that no one wanted to ask publicly. The royal family's reputation was at stake, and questioning the authenticity of a royal pregnancy was a risky endeavor. Yet, the questions persisted, and the rumors didn't go away. In fact, they began to intensify. The idea of a surrogate for Meghan Markle was not an entirely implausible one. Meghan and Harry had made it clear early on that they were committed to breaking the mold of royal tradition. They had already proven themselves to be willing to defy the usual expectations of the monarchy. Meghan, in particular, had become a lightning rod for those who wanted to see the monarchy modernized. Her American background, her progressive values, and her previous career as an actress made her an outsider within the royal family, yet one who had been embraced by the public. The notion that she could break yet another royal tradition by using a surrogate wasn't so far-fetched after all. As the speculation grew, certain key moments in Meghan's pregnancy seemed to fuel the fire. One of the most talked-about incidents occurred during a public event when Meghan appeared to be wearing a loose-fitting coat, and her bump seemed to appear and disappear in a matter of hours. It was the kind of inconsistency that tabloids thrive on. Some speculated that Meghan's pregnancy was not as it seemed. Others wondered if it was a clever ruse to avoid the intense media spotlight. The more questions arose, the more Meghan and Harry became the subject of intense media scrutiny. But the couple remained tight-lipped about the rumors. They didn't directly address the speculation about a surrogate. Instead, they continued with their carefully crafted public appearances, making brief comments about their excitement for the baby but providing little in the way of specifics. This only added to the mystique surrounding the pregnancy. For the first time in a long time, the royal family was facing a real challenge, a challenge that involved not just the press but also the public's trust in their narrative. Despite the silence from Meghan and Harry, the whispers of a surrogate would not go away. In the background, the royal family's public relations team worked overtime to manage the growing crisis. Behind the scenes, officials and palace insiders reportedly tried to suppress the rumors, hoping that they would eventually die down. But as Meghan's due date drew closer, the tension only escalated. The royal family was under intense pressure to maintain the integrity of the story, even as the cracks in the facade became more apparent. In many ways, the surrogacy rumors were not just about Meghan and Harry. They were about something larger, the way in which the royal family interacted with the public and how much control they truly had over their own story. The monarchy had always been a symbol of continuity, tradition, and stability. But Meghan and Harry's royal journey had defied those traditional expectations at every turn. Now, with the rumors swirling about the surrogacy, the couple's carefully curated image was being called into question. Could they really maintain the narrative they had built? Or would the truth finally come to light? As the months passed, the rumors about surrogacy continued to bubble beneath the surface. No one knew what was really happening behind closed doors. But the questions lingered, and the speculation continued to grow. Was this the end of Meghan and Harry's carefully constructed fairy tale? Or was it simply another chapter in their ongoing story of defiance against the norms of royal life? The rumors about Meghan Markle's pregnancy began to take on a life of their own. As speculation continued to swirl about the possibility of surrogacy, the couple's public statements and actions seemed to only add fuel to the fire. What was once a quiet murmur behind closed doors had transformed into a public spectacle. The very question of whether Meghan had carried her own child became an issue of immense interest, not just for royal watchers but for the general public as well. Yet, despite the growing media attention, neither Meghan nor Harry addressed the accusations directly. Instead, they doubled down on their commitment to privacy, offering only brief comments and avoiding any specific acknowledgement of the rumors surrounding the pregnancy. In the face of mounting questions, the couple's response was one of defiance and resistance. They refused to acknowledge or engage with the growing chorus of speculation. Instead of addressing the surrogacy rumors head-on, they chose to keep their personal lives as private as possible. In many ways, this only intensified the public's curiosity. The more the couple withdrew from the public eye, the more the media and the public sought answers. The royal family's attempts to maintain control over the narrative only made the story more complex, as it quickly became a tug-of-war between the media, the public, and the royal couple. In response to the ongoing questions, Kensington Palace released several official statements denying the surrogacy claims. These denials were carefully worded, vague enough to leave room for interpretation but strong enough to refute the more extreme accusations. The palace insisted that Meghan was indeed pregnant and that the couple was overjoyed to be expecting their first child. The statement also expressed the couple's desire for privacy during this special time. On the surface, it appeared to be a straightforward response to the rumors, but beneath it lay a deeper, more troubling reality. The palace's denials, however, did little to quell the growing storm of suspicion. Instead of calming the waters, the official statements seemed to only raise more questions. The absence of any concrete proof or personal confirmation from Meghan or Harry left room for further speculation. The public's skepticism was understandable. In the age of social media and instant access to information, it was impossible to keep secrets, especially when the story was so highly publicized. The more the couple tried to shut down the rumors, the more the media and the public dug in their heels, determined to uncover the truth. One of the first signs that the denials were not enough to quell the growing suspicions came when Meghan made her first public appearance after the pregnancy announcement. In December 2018, just a couple of months after the official news of the pregnancy, Meghan stepped out for a royal engagement in London. The moment was highly anticipated, as it would be one of the first times Meghan had been seen in public since her pregnancy had been announced. The royal couple's appearance was meant to be a celebration of the pregnancy, a moment of joy for the new parents-to-be. But instead of the usual fanfare, the public's attention was drawn to something else entirely: the way Meghan was dressed. She wore a loose-fitting coat, and her baby bump, which had been the subject of so much speculation, seemed to have disappeared. The photograph of Meghan stepping out in the coat became the subject of intense media scrutiny. The image was quickly dissected, with many questioning why Meghan's bump appeared so small or even absent. The online forums lit up with theories about what might be going on. Could she have used a surrogate? Was this another public relations stunt? The questions mounted, and the silence from Meghan and Harry only seemed to fuel the fire. For those who had already begun to doubt the authenticity of the pregnancy, the photo seemed to confirm their suspicions. Meghan's decision to wear a coat that hid her baby bump seemed like an intentional move to avoid scrutiny. The coat, which appeared to have been chosen with great care, was seen as an attempt to conceal something. The media, always eager to jump on any perceived inconsistencies, pounced on the opportunity to suggest that something wasn't right. It was a moment that would go down in history as one of the first public instances where Meghan and Harry's carefully crafted image began to crack. While the royal couple stayed silent on the matter, the media and the public's fascination with Meghan's pregnancy only deepened. The more Meghan retreated from the spotlight, the more the public demanded answers. The palace's repeated denials, though well-intentioned, seemed to do little to ease the growing sense of distrust. It became clear that the public wasn't just questioning the pregnancy, it was questioning everything. What was real, and what was manufactured? Was Meghan and Harry's story about their pregnancy just another piece of the carefully constructed royal narrative, designed to fit neatly into a storyline that the public could accept? Or was there a deeper truth that had yet to be revealed? Despite the growing pressure, Meghan and Harry refused to engage directly with the rumors. Their silence spoke volumes. It was a strategy that worked for a while, but it was only a matter of time before the truth would come to light, whether they were ready for it or not. The couple's refusal to address the surrogacy rumors head-on was, in many ways, a calculated move. By maintaining their silence, they hoped to push back against the media's invasive questions. But in doing so, they only created more room for speculation to thrive. The longer the silence continued, the louder the whispers grew. The truth, it seemed, was waiting to be uncovered. As the months passed and Meghan's pregnancy progressed, the surrogacy rumors persisted. They took on new forms as the media and the public continued to search for clues. Every appearance, every photo op, every word spoken by Meghan or Harry was scrutinized under a microscope. And with each passing day, the pressure mounted. Meghan and Harry's refusal to address the rumors directly became an increasingly controversial decision. The media, the public, and even the royal family's inner circle began to grow restless. It was clear that this was no longer just about a royal pregnancy. It was about the very nature of truth, trust, and the control of public perception. In the end, the denials were never enough to silence the growing questions. The public's need for transparency, especially in a time when secrets were harder to keep than ever, demanded more than vague statements and evasive answers. The questions would not go away. And as the royal family's carefully constructed narrative began to unravel, it became apparent that the story of Meghan Markle's pregnancy was about to take a dramatic turn. As the world waited for the arrival of baby Sussex, the tension surrounding Meghan Markle's pregnancy continued to build. What should have been a joyous and momentous occasion for the royal family was quickly turning into a complex and controversial narrative. The whispers that had started as subtle rumors about a possible surrogate were now being joined by a rising chorus of questions about the couple's honesty, the nature of their pregnancy, and the public perception of their private lives. It was becoming harder to ignore the cracks in the royal narrative, and with every passing day, more inconsistencies seemed to surface. The most significant of these cracks was the growing attention to the physical inconsistencies in Meghan's pregnancy. While public appearances from the Duchess of Sussex had been rare, the few moments she did appear in public became the subject of intense scrutiny. At times, her baby bump seemed to fluctuate in size, growing larger or smaller with each new photograph. In some photos, Meghan's bump was clearly visible and appeared to be well along in her pregnancy. Yet, in other moments, the bump seemed to vanish or shrink. These apparent inconsistencies sparked immediate curiosity and raised questions about the authenticity of the pregnancy. Was it possible that Meghan's pregnancy was not as it seemed? What made matters worse was the fact that Meghan herself seemed reluctant to address these questions head-on. As the media continued to speculate, the Duchess and her team remained silent. Instead of offering clarity, Meghan's silence seemed to fuel the rumors. The public, already intrigued by the secrecy surrounding the couple's pregnancy, was now becoming more suspicious. It wasn't just the tabloid press that was questioning the pregnancy, it was the everyday people, the royal followers, and even longtime royal supporters. Everyone seemed to be searching for answers, and Meghan's refusal to address the speculation was only adding to the mystery. One of the most puzzling aspects of the pregnancy was the lack of transparency regarding Meghan's due date. As the months passed, the official timeline for her pregnancy seemed to shift. There were reports suggesting that she was due earlier than initially stated, and then there were others that suggested a much later timeline. The discrepancies in the reporting only fueled the speculation that something wasn't quite right. The couple's insistence on privacy was, of course, understandable, but it was also creating an environment where the public's curiosity could run rampant. The more they withheld from the public, the more questions arose. As the due date approached, the questions grew louder, and it became clear that the narrative being put forth by Meghan and Harry was not adding up. The royal family, known for their tight control over public images, had long relied on a script that kept the monarchy's most private affairs out of the public eye. However, with Meghan's pregnancy, things were different. The traditional rules of secrecy and controlled publicity seemed to be slipping through the cracks. The public had come to expect the royal family to adhere to a certain level of decorum and tradition, and when Meghan and Harry began to break away from those expectations, the public's trust began to erode. One of the most notable examples of these inconsistencies came during a high-profile royal event. Meghan attended a ceremony with Prince Harry, and she appeared to be visibly pregnant. However, what caught the attention of the photographers was the way Meghan's bump seemed to shift in size depending on how she stood or the angle from which the photo was taken. In one shot, the bump was clearly visible, but in another, it appeared much smaller or almost absent altogether. This led to further questions about the authenticity of the pregnancy. Was it possible that the baby bump was the result of clever styling? Or was there a deeper reason for the fluctuations? For many, these inconsistencies became too difficult to ignore. The couple had long been seen as modernizers of the royal family, breaking away from centuries of tradition to forge their own path. But with Meghan's pregnancy, their efforts to present a more transparent and relatable image were quickly being overshadowed by the growing controversy. The more Meghan and Harry tried to maintain control over the narrative, the more the public began to feel as if they were being kept in the dark. As the media coverage continued, one of the most troubling aspects for Meghan and Harry was the mounting pressure they faced to confirm or deny the rumors. The British tabloid press, notorious for its relentless pursuit of royal stories, had already latched onto the surrogacy claims, and the pressure on the couple to respond was becoming unbearable. With each new leak, with each new photograph, the couple's silence grew more conspicuous. And yet, despite the growing tension, Meghan and Harry maintained their stance of privacy. They refused to address the speculation publicly, which only added to the mounting frustration of both the press and the public. As the pregnancy neared its final stages, the couple's desire for privacy became more apparent. Meghan, who had once been seen as a breath of fresh air in the royal family, now seemed to be retreating from the public eye entirely. She withdrew from the spotlight, making fewer public appearances and staying out of the media's reach. The public, who had once been captivated by her every move, was now left wondering, why the sudden silence? Why the retreat from public life? For some, Meghan's silence was a sign that she had something to hide. The rumors of surrogacy, which had started as a faint whisper, now seemed to be the only explanation for the growing mystery. The idea that Meghan had used a surrogate to carry her child began to take on new weight, as the evidence of her erratic public appearances and the inconsistencies surrounding her due date became harder to dismiss. For those who had followed the royal family for years, the situation felt like a dramatic departure from the norm. The royal family had always been known for its strict adherence to tradition and propriety, but Meghan's pregnancy was anything but traditional. Her efforts to carve out a more modern and open royal role had, in many ways, set her apart from the rest of the family. But now, those very efforts were being called into question. As the months passed and the baby's birth grew nearer, the narrative surrounding Meghan's pregnancy began to shift. The public's curiosity turned into a form of impatience, and the rumors continued to circulate. The idea of a surrogate, once dismissed as an outlandish theory, was now seen by some as the only explanation that made sense. The public's growing frustration with the lack of transparency was only amplified by the palace's refusal to comment on the situation. The stage was set for a revelation that would ultimately shake the royal family to its core. From the earliest days of the rumors, there were hints that someone close to Meghan and Harry had begun to speak out, but always in hushed tones, always off the record. Then, as the surrogacy whispers grew louder, fragments of private conversations began to surface in unexpected places. Snippets of phone calls quoted in tabloid exposes, leaked text messages appearing on gossip blogs, and anonymous insiders offering exclusive transcriptions of intimate exchanges. Each leak was more sensational than the last, and together they painted a portrait of a couple desperately trying to maintain control over their narrative, even as that narrative was crumbling around them. The first significant leak emerged 6 weeks before Meghan's due date. A well-known gossip magazine published what it claimed were text exchanges between Meghan and her personal assistant. In one message, Meghan allegedly wrote, "I need the world to believe this is real, no questions." A follow-up text reportedly read, "Bring the bump wraps. We can't risk a slip-up." According to the magazine, the assistant had been instructed to procure different styles of maternity coats and shapewear to disguise the inconsistencies in Meghan's silhouette. If authentic, the messages suggested a concerted effort to manipulate public perception at every turn. Almost immediately, skepticism about the authenticity of the text arose. Some pointed out inconsistencies in the timestamps and formatting. Others noted that the leaks conveniently appeared at moments of heightened scrutiny. Yet despite questions about their provenance, the text struck a chord. They dovetailed with the visual inconsistencies observers had noted in Meghan's public appearances and fortified the surrogacy narrative. The public, already primed to doubt, seized on the messages as confirmation that the couple was orchestrating an elaborate ruse. A few days later, more private recordings emerged, this time, purportedly from a voicemail left by Harry to a close friend. In the recording, The voice, unmistakably Harry's, spoke with uncharacteristic bitterness. "It's the only way to protect us. Do you really think they'd let a pregnant American duchess on the cover of People unless they controlled every frame?" The clip ended abruptly, leaving listeners to wonder what specifics Harry might have been referring to. Had the couple solicited a surrogate under the guise of a traditional pregnancy to secure more favorable media coverage? The implications were staggering. Critics were quick to pounce. Legal analysts weighed in, questioning whether any of these leaks could be proven admissible or real. Media ethicists debated the morality of publishing stolen communications, even if they appeared to reveal wrongdoing. And Royals defenders accused the press of orchestrating a hit job designed to discredit Meghan and Harry at all costs. But in the court of public opinion, the details of authenticity mattered far less than the narrative they supported. Meghan and Harry, it seemed, were willing to fabricate a pregnancy to maintain their glamorous image. Further leaks followed. An alleged transcript of a video meeting in which Meghan was heard asking her private staff, "Can we get a clear timeline on surrogacy law? I need cover if anyone asks about hospitals." Though unverified, the meeting snippet reinforced the impression that the couple was coordinating an intricate plan behind the scenes. Each time a new leak dropped, social media erupted with outrage and conspiracy theories. Was this a cynical ploy to protect their royalty status? Or was it a desperate response to an unsustainable media onslaught? Meanwhile, those close to the couple remained silent, at least publicly. Privately, some insiders expressed unease. One former palace aide, speaking anonymously, told a gossip column, "I've never seen them so paranoid. They used to laugh off nonsense stories, but now they're snapping at staff who merely ask how the baby is doing." Such anecdotes painted Meghan and Harry as increasingly distrustful, convinced that everyone around them might be working for, or against, the narrative they desperately wanted to preserve. Despite the swirl of allegations, Meghan's due date loomed. Every day brought new pressure. The media demanded proof of pregnancy, royal watchers combed through archival photos for clues, and social media audiences speculated endlessly. And yet Meghan and Harry maintained their silence, neither confirming nor denying the leaked conversations. Their only public statements were brief expressions of gratitude for the well wishes surrounding their growing family, carefully worded to avoid any direct reference to the controversy. At this point, the surrogacy rumors had moved beyond mere gossip. They had become a full-blown media scandal, complete with competing narratives, anonymous insiders, and legal threats. The Palace Communications Office found itself issuing frequent denials of various leaks, each one followed by yet another sensational claim. The resulting cycle of assertion and counter-assertion intensified public fascination, driving ever greater traffic to headlines questioning Meghan's authenticity. In the days that followed, the palace's inner sanctum became a hotbed of whispered warnings and frantic strategy sessions. Senior aides, accustomed to long-standing protocol, were suddenly thrust into crisis management mode, drafting statements to refute each new leak while scrambling to preserve the couple's privacy. One aide later described the situation as damage control on steroids, with every new day bringing a fresh round of alleged recordings, messages, or insider testimony. Some of the most damning leaks centered on conversations between Meghan and a high-profile lifestyle columnist. According to an online dossier released by an unnamed source, Meghan was overheard telling the columnist, "I need the world to see this as our miracle, not a transaction." The implication was clear. The couple was treating the pregnancy as a public relations opportunity rather than a private family joy. While the palace insisted the columnist had fabricated the entire exchange, photos of Meghan smiling warmly beside the journalist at a prior event gave credence to the claim that such conversations could have taken place. Amid the chaos, a former security guard, identified only as Joe, surfaced on a tabloid web series, alleging that he had overheard Meghan instructing staff to practice a pregnancy walk, ensuring that her gait consistently displayed the proper shape of a bump. "She literally told us to rehearse how we moved," he said. "It felt eerie, like we were putting on a show." Detractors saw this as further proof of an orchestrated narrative, while supporters argued it was simply a precaution taken by a woman under immense pressure to appear perfect. The most serious leak, however, came in the form of an audio file that purported to capture a private Zoom meeting between Harry, Meghan, and their security lead. In the recording, voices alleged to belong to Harry and Meghan discussed contingency plans in case paparazzi managed to photograph a flat belly day. Phrases like "bump back up," and alternate maternity dress punctuated the exchange. The authenticity of the recording was fiercely contested. Audio experts pointed out background noise inconsistencies. Yet the very existence of it galvanized public belief in a surrogate plot. By this point, the surrogacy story had eclipsed almost all other royal news. Social media exploded with memes contrasting carefully retouched paparazzi photos of Meghan's bump with unverified smartphone snapshots that showed little evidence of any pregnancy. News outlets ran daily graphics tracking bump size trends, and armchair detectives mapped out timelines of alleged wiggles or shifts in seam lines on Meghan's dresses. Online polls asked whether the public believed the leaks or dismissed them as tabloid fodder. Inside the royal household, tensions escalated. Some senior royals felt that Meghan and Harry's handling of the situation was undermining the entire institution. A palace veteran lamented, "They've turned centuries of tradition on its head," but nobody thought they'd use surrogacy rumors as their battlefield. Others sympathized with the couple's desire for privacy, arguing that the leaks represented a gross invasion of personal space. The disagreeing factions within the palace only made the crisis harder to contain. Amid the swirl of allegations, a turning point arrived when a well-known investigative reporter, renowned for exposing celebrity secrets, claimed to have obtained bank documents indicating a substantial wire transfer to a fertility clinic in California. The story broke with dramatic headlines. Did Meghan pay for a surrogate? The reporter's sources remained anonymous, and no direct proof tied the payment to surrogacy services. Nevertheless, it was enough to send shockwaves through the public sphere. Once again, Kensington Palace issued a statement calling the report utterly false and defamatory, threatening legal action if more leaks surfaced. Yet the rumors only grew. Online forums dedicated to royal gossip saw membership skyrocket. Surrogacy trackers sprang up, with volunteers logging every appearance of Meghan Markle, noting outfit details, lighting conditions, and camera angles. Even mainstream broadcast news programs ran segments interrogating royal correspondents about the plausibility of a surrogate. The public appetite for the story was insatiable. No development was too small to escape examination. At the heart of this scandal lay a fundamental question. Why would Meghan and Harry engage in such an elaborate deception? Supporters posited that they were victims of an obsessive media environment, a couple driven to extreme measures to reclaim control over their narrative. Critics argued it was a cynical marketing ploy, designed to generate endless headlines and maintain relevance in a 24/7 news cycle. Either way, the leaks had proven one thing: the couple's reputation would never be the same. Behind the scenes, some palace insiders grew concerned that the constant barrage of leaks might be orchestrated by a disgruntled former staff member or even a foreign adversary seeking to sow discord within the monarchy. Security teams widened their scope of internal investigations, and IT specialists combed through digital logs for signs of hacking or unauthorized recordings. The notion that someone close to Meghan and Harry could be systematically leaking private conversations created an atmosphere of paranoia. Meanwhile, Meghan and Harry remained publicly stoic. In carefully curated Instagram posts, they expressed gratitude for the public support and hinted at the joy they felt awaiting their child's arrival. But even these posts were met with skepticism, with commentators noting that none included any direct images of Meghan's baby bump. It was as if every facet of their public communications had become suspect. As Meghan's due date approached, the palace made a final, desperate move. They arranged for a single, controlled photography session outside Windsor Cottage, capturing Meghan cradling her bump in soft lighting. The images were released exclusively to a major magazine under strict conditions: no accompanying interview, limited reproduction rights. The session appeared designed to quash the rumors once and for all, but instead it reignited debate. Some viewers praised the images as beautiful and authentic. Others labeled them as too perfectly staged to be genuine. By the time Meghan went into labor, the world was watching not just for the announcement of a baby's birth, but for signs of truth in the royal narrative. Every statement, every photograph, every silence was interpreted through the lens of the surrogacy scandal. The leaks of private conversations had transformed a happy family story into a media firestorm. And while the palace continued to deny every allegation, the public's trust had been deeply eroded. As the final hours approached, Meghan and Harry faced an impossible choice: to maintain their silence and risk further erosion of their credibility, or to break their code of privacy and publicly confirm the truth. It was a decision that would not only define this chapter of their lives, but potentially reshape the monarchy's relationship with modern media and public trust.